Tell me he doesn't believe the words he just said where they are not ready to go for it.
I think he was truthful in that last night, as the team stands last night, the team's not ready. And he was talking, literally just made a draft pick, and knowing that draft pick is not going to contribute one bit this year to this team, that's why he can say something like that. Let it marinate. Let's see what happens on day 2 of the draft because of movement, not because of who they're going to draft. Although who they draft and what happens with them may determine. There's a move coming down the pike. There's plenty of time here for this offseason to take place. Trades are starting to swirl around in the NHL. They did a couple days ago, and we know that the Red Wings are involved with a couple of players, and DeBrincat being the big name player that's out there that's a former 40-goal scorer. But, yeah, I really believe they're going to improve this team in the offseason, and I think they can improve it enough to make the playoffs. I think when Steve Yzerman speaks, when he thinks about making a playoff, he thinks about contending, not just making the playoffs. But I think he's talking about old Red Wing teams that made deep runs, and this team is far away from that. They don't have the team yet. They're still collecting the players necessary to compete for a Stanley Cup run. Competing for a Stanley Cup run and competing for that wild card spot are two totally different things.
True. And I think there's still a chance he lands DeBrincat. Again, if DeBrincat wants to be here, the Wings are the only team with...
Seems like he wants to be here.
And the Wings have the space. They have 3 consecutive second-round picks. Can they bundle 2 of them? Can they get stuff going? Now, we'll get to the latest from Ottawa at 10:30 because their GM spoke last night. Article in the Ottawa Sun. They're being pretty stubborn, too. He could still pull something off for DeBrincat. But, Gator, my concern is if he's honest, if he really feels that way, if he's going to keep slow playing this, if he doesn't feel like they're ready to make a move, isn't that an indictment on the job a general manager has done if 5 off seasons in, they aren't in a position to trade for DeBrincat or in a position to trade for insert player that maybe Gator would prefer? I know you're not a DeBrincat guy.
Well, I don't mind DeBrincat. I just don't like the numbers that are being bandied about. People saying, oh, you give him, $8-9 million for eight years. Hell no.
And I think Yzerman...
I think he's in the hell no company too, yeah.
So then he's going to negotiate from a standpoint of I'm not going to be reckless, I'm not going to overpay, and I respect that. But if he doesn't make any move at all because he believes the clip you just heard from the draft night, I would be concerned.
Well, hold him to it if that happens in the offseason and there's no movement, which I find hard to believe because every offseason Yzerman's been here, there's been some movement. Be careful of what it is. It's almost like Brad Holmes in the moves that the Lions have made with free agency when it comes to that. That the majority of those moves have been one-year deals. Some of the Yzerman moves have been one-year deals or very short-term deals. Let's see what the moves are this offseason. Is he going to get somebody that's going to be given a contract, as soon as they bring him in? Oh, we're going to sign to a 5-year extension or something like that. And that's the thought with DeBrincat is that you're going to have to give him an extension. And, of course, you would because you don't want – Red Wings aren't in a position to take rental players.
No.
You want to move forward and take guys that are going to be part of your core for years to come. And yeah, I think there's a plan in place to see how competitive, to see this team being ultra competitive for Stanley Cups within a 5-year period.
I want him to build the right way too. And I look at DeBrincat as a 25, 26-year-old finisher who can score a ton of goals. And for a team that wants to be a good defensive hockey team, I can respect it. But you also need some guys who put the puck in the net. If you add DeBrincat to this team, you have oodles of cap space. So I know the price tag might scare you, but for a guy...
But I'm not doing it just to do it.
No, I'm not either. But if you could get him without giving up premium assets, you do it.
You're going to have... But that's a lot of ifs. So if you... But what if you do have to give up premium assets? Do you do it?
How about this? Would you give up next year's Boston pick? Because I would.
I probably would.
Okay.
I probably would.
And I think Ottawa would be silly not to take it, given the situation they're at.
When the GM of Ottawa said a few days ago that he doesn't think that DeBrincat's going to go for a first-round pick this year, everybody's like, oh, maybe we can give him for a second pick. No, what it means is that maybe a first-round pick next year. And the Wings have 2 first-round picks next year. So I have no idea what the prospect looks like next year. When it comes to the draft,
sure.
This was supposed to be a premium crop of players in this year's draft. Is it the same thing next year where you'd want to hang on to both picks? I don't know.
Gator, I have no issue if he came in saying, we like this draft a lot. We're going to use both our first-round picks. Ottawa has no leverage. We're going to give him a hard time and push him to the brink, knowing we're the only place he wants to play and we're going to get our guy. If he believes that, great. If he believes what he said on the microphone, that's not good.
So you expect him to actually say that?
No. But that's why I'm asking.
Well, you can't read his mind.
I'm asking if what he said is true, how would you feel?
I mean, I kind of feel that this is a position they're in right now. And that if they could, I wish that this was a better free agent crop. I really do. Because they do have the cap space to go out and sign some players. But because there's no free agents that are really worth it, you have to start thinking about the trade route and find somebody's player that they're willing to move. And those aren't easy to come by, but there happens to be one for sure. There's a couple other guys out there whose names have been bandied about. We'll see if they can pounce on that. And again, the draft is the draft. 3 straight second-round picks in the early part of the second round. You've got 2 first-round picks to look at for next year's draft as well. They've got some assets to move. They also have some prospects that other teams covet, defensive prospects. Mm-hmm. They've got some players on their team that maybe other teams would look at and say, well, you know what? We'd like a Michael Rasmussen, or we'll take a shot at Zadina, whatever the case is. Or maybe somebody says, hey, would you part with Lucas Raymond? And then you're like, well, you know what? For the right player, we would. And the offseason is a long offseason. I know you want hard answers now. But you're not going to get them.
Gator, I want to get to people. The biggest thing I'm just trying to hit home is actions will speak louder than the words, but the words last night are not the words that I want to see put into action the rest of this offseason.